larger amounts of money. Now, obviously, she's a public figure, so it seems like that may be the reason she was targeted, not necessarily because of the largesse of the scheme. But it does stand out to me because it is a relatively small amount of money that we're looking at.
Jake, I want to ask you, James is just one of the people mentioned in that Truth Social post that we talked about, where the president essentially said to Pam Bondi, go after these people. How much coordination, if any, do we think there was between Lindsay Halligan and Bondi before charging the former New York AG?
So that's actually the weird part, is the Wall Street Journal had some reporting come out that indicates Halligan kind of went a little rogue on it and actually didn't tell either AG Pam Bondi or Todd Blanche. Now, I never want to speculate into a competitor's sourcing, but what it does make you wonder is whoever leaked this, were they okay with the implication that either Pam Bondi isn't on top of this or that Halligan might look like she's jumping rank and there's really no downside to doing that internally? What I can tell you from my reporting is that Pam Bondi is very much on the ropes internally. I did this informal poll in one of my most recent stories for the newsletter where I asked Trump officials to rank 1 through 5 who the cabinet members in the worst standing were.
Yeah, that's Trump. A fun game. Okay.
And one of these guys put Bondi 1 through 4.
Really?
Just lumped in everyone else at the end. So the knives are definitely starting to come out for her. And I think that that's where we see this cart getting ahead of the horse type recurring theme with all these, cases.
And Barrett, I want to ask you, because MSNBC has exclusively learned that federal prosecutors in Maryland could indict Trump's former national security advisor as early as next week. When it comes to John Bolton, what charges do you think he's likely to face based on what you've learned about the raid we saw at his Maryland home back in September?
Yeah, so what it appears that they're looking at would be some sort of charge related to mishandling of classified information, which, as everyone will remember, it's similar charges that were facing President Trump before he won his reelection. What's interesting is this is now, if Bolton was indicted, he would be the third one of President Trump's very vocal critics to have been indicted. To me, this really only adds to the strength of potential motions that all three of these defendants, Comey, James, and potentially Bolton, would have, saying that they were not chosen because of the severity of their crimes. They were singled out for one reason, and that's an inappropriate reason. It's not enough to charge somebody just because they were a critic of the president. So not saying they'll be successful in those motions, but the fact that there's 3 of them on this, quote unquote, enemies list that all would have been indicted certainly would give some gasoline to that motion.
And Jake, 2 people familiar with the Bolton case have said it has recently been sped up. How much do you think is that pressure coming from the White House?
Well, obviously, I think the whole timeline of what's going on with Halligan coming into that district, and even whether her appointment is fully legal or not, is a whole separate conversation. But yeah, you have to ask yourself, why weren't some of these charges lined up in the first weeks or months of the administration? There was a guy hanging around Trump named Ivan Raiklin who dubbed himself the Secretary of Retribution. They had a real transition this time. These were things that you think, if they were feasible to get at least, in front of a grand jury, and all this stuff, that for whatever reason they're starting now as we await a member of the House to be sworn in as the deciding vote on all these Epstein files. It doesn't look great. And I think that the desperation is starting to come from a lot of different corners of this administration by this point.
I also want to circle back once again to that Truth Social post we've been talking about, because so far the only person named in that hasn't been indicted is Senator Adam Schiff. And here's what he had to say about this on Thursday.
Those of us on the president's enemies list, and it is a long and growing list, will not be intimidated. We will not be deterred. We will do our jobs. We will stand up to this president.
Jake, this week we learned that post was intended to be a direct message, and Trump was surprised to learn it had been made public. How does that happen?
Look, I've never heard of anyone using the Truth Social DMs function. I do have an account on there.
I didn't know it had one, to be honest with you, but
However, one thing that stands out to me about why would you ever even want to use the DMs is, I guess, Trump and his family own that company. So it's the toughest place, I guess, compared to if you were doing this on WhatsApp, under Meta, or any Google product, or even Signal. They're not going to turn those internal communications over. So it might actually be one of the safest places.
So, folks, the knives are out for Pam Bondi, but I do wonder if she's also going to have knives out for other people. And you can see it playing both ways with this, because let's say, and like, this report's really interesting. Oh, Pam Bondi didn't know about these charges coming down. Is that an indication that this new lady went rogue? Is it an insinuation that her and Donald Trump were working together and cutting Pam Bondi out, which maybe is a sign that Trump's getting ready to fire her or sink her? Or is this a story that leaked from Bondi, and this is all speculation, because she knows this looks terrible, and if she can be like, Donald Trump went rogue and I didn't do this, then first of all, I mean, she should resign, right? Like, if that happens, she should resign, right? And I think everyone, as much as I'm not a fan of Pam Bondi, if she quit and said this is why, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I believe that. Because people will believe her, regardless if it's true or not. People would believe her if she said Donald Trump did something stupid and he didn't consult with cabinet before he did it. Would you believe that? I would. He tried to have his vice president assassinated, or at the very least allowed his mob to do it and didn't really dissuade them. So if he would have one of his vice president assassinated, executed, whatever, then I'm pretty sure he would go behind Pam Bondi's back. But this all means, though, that it's going to get very ugly. Whether Bondi is cut out, whether she gets revenge on Trump by leaking this information or by sort of leaning back and disassociating herself from this, it's only going to get worse. And this is just a sign of the Trump cabinet. The difference this time, though, and this would be interesting, is that as much as people are Trump cronies, people saw how Trump treated his cronies the first time, 2016 to 2020. And a lot of people went to jail or almost went to jail for Donald Trump. And I do wonder if some of these people, knowing they don't have the immunity Trump does, are getting ready to squeal and to brandish knives and name names to keep their ass safe.